Greetings and welcome back to Pseudo's journey through the Japanese air attack tree in War Thunder, a series of subpar guides made for unskilled free-to-play players by an unskilled free-to-play player. This generally acceptable day, we shall be having a fine overview of the final float plane fighter in the Japanese air attack tree, the N1K1. This quite unique plane can be found foldered under the A6M2N at battle rating 2.3 in rank 2 in the first line of the Japanese air attack tree. Similarly to the J1N1 that we just covered, the N1K1 is quite the deviation from the standard playstyle of Japanese planes. It exhibits characteristics similar to the planes of other nations, specifically the US. However, this isn't always in the best of ways. It is also a float plane, which always leads to some interesting and usually not optimal characteristics. For better or worse, let's get into it. Where to start with the performance of the N1K1? I suppose I could just save us all a whole bunch of time and say that it's a jack of no trades, master of none, but not particularly bad at anything either. That made perfect sense to you, so we can end this video early and all go on with our lives, right? No? Good, it doesn't make any sense to me either. I suppose I'd better just take a shot at it, so here goes nothing. To start off, the turn performance of the N1K1 is fairly mediocre, specifically for a Japanese plane. It's not that it particularly drags a lot or bleeds a lot of energy, it simply just isn't as good at turning as most other planes in the attack tree. Most of this is due to the floats. While it definitely isn't the worst, pretty much any Japanese planes and even a few fighters from other attack trees will be able to close in on you fairly fast in a dogfight. The rudder performance is fairly decent. It's a little slow, but you can pull the plane side to side without too many issues. The ailerons are similarly okay. They can roll the plane a little faster than you might expect for such a large float plane, but still nowhere as close to the other fighters in the Japanese air attack tree of this tier. There can also be times in dives where it completely locks up and the plane might as well not even have them. Overall, I try to avoid rolling maneuvers unless they are necessary. The engine is where the N1K1 is well above average. The Mitsubishi Kasei 14 pumps out more horsepower than anything else that you've seen on a fighter before in the attack tree. You can reach fairly high straight-line speeds that are comparable to many other fighters at this battle rating. Not only that, but it gets there quick as well. It has a fairly good acceleration rate, meaning that with WEP on, you'll rarely find yourself slower than 300 km per hour, except in the most energy-draining of dogfights. This also contributes to the good climb rate of the N1K1, another metric in which it's pretty good. You can climb at around 15 to 17 degrees with no worries, and you'll reach fairly high altitudes. You typically climb a little more than things like the P-40s and the BF-109s, but not quite as well as something like a MiG-3 who's really trying. This is nice as it means you get a relatively decent energy advantage. The energy retention of the N1K1 is a bit interesting. You bleed energy fairly quickly as you are a bit heavier of an aircraft, but you never bleed energy beyond a certain level. As stated earlier, even in fairly long turn fights, you never get below 350 km per hour-ish, give or take 10-20 km per hour in any direction in many situations. You also regain energy fairly quickly due to the engine, so that is a plus. The durability of the N1K1 isn't great, go figure, so you need to be a bit careful about getting hit. I will note that at this rank, the floats can actually tank a number of shots for you. I found myself actually taking fights a little more carelessly and aggressively than I do on many other planes and just putting my floats between me and my opponent, as again, they can take a few rounds for you at this battle rating. A more pressing concern is the dive performance. You actually have a powerful enough engine and heavy enough airframe that you dive incredibly quickly. This is not optimal, as while your wings rip at a relatively high speed of 600 km per hour, the floats can rip before that and frequently take large chunks of your wings with them. And not only that, but you experience some pretty bad control lockup in a dive. This means that if enemies are maneuvering and dive away from you, getting guns on target might be a bit more than you had bargained for. So, what is my issue with the N1K1? It seems to have a very decent engine, fairly good energy retention, and all-around respectable dogfighting agility. That should make it a good boom and zoom aircraft when combined with its good climb rate, or a good energy fighter at the very least, shouldn't it? Is it perhaps that I've just become so accustomed to the Japanese turn fighter playstyle that I've become completely incapable of playing something that requires me to activate more than a single neural circuit which causes my fingers to slam on the elevator in a fight? Yes. That's besides the point, though. My main issue isn't any one of the specific performance metrics, it's how they all work together. Between the increased weight of the plane and the massive float, it can't particularly turn well. Not only that, but you never seem to be able to turn to your fullest capability. As I was saying earlier, you never particularly reach low speeds in a turn fight. This means that you have a decent amount of energy at all times, but the performance of the plane never lets you capitalize on it. The vertical performance of the plane also isn't great, and while you can do some vertical maneuvers, you can't really prop hang or win stall fights against enemies, as you just can't hang in these maneuvers long enough to outperform opponents. Another issue is that while the engine on the N1K1 is quite good by Japanese standards, it's not quite good enough to allow you to act as a competent B and Z fighter, just because many other planes can match it. Sure, if you have an energy advantage, you can probably get away, but you don't always have that luxury. You see what I'm saying a little bit? It's very hard to explain, but it's just not particularly spectacular in any metric. That in and of itself isn't a bad thing. Many US planes have a doctrine to that degree, and most of them are absolutely fantastic to play. The issue is that it isn't quite a jack of all trades either. It can do a few things fairly averagely and a few things slightly below average. However, if you are up against an enemy that even has one trick in their plane and knows how to exploit it, there's nothing you can do performance-wise against them. I think the main problem is specifically the float. Much of this performance, both the energy and dogfighting issues, could be solved if the plane was just a bit lighter, could hang in maneuvers for a little longer, and if its flight performance could actually match the power its engine was trying to give it. I was honestly a little bit shocked when I learned that they put a battle rating 5.3 airframe at 2.3, but after playing it, I kind of see the reason now. With the float and downgraded engine, this plane really loses out on just enough performance in every metric that it is unable to capitalize on any of them. The N1K1 family is well known in the Japanese air tech tree as a jack of all trades to match the best of them, but this is simply a peasant of all trades and still a master of none. So, how do we play this plane in air battles? Carefully. Obviously, climb up as much as you can at the start of a match. Now, I actually recommend sticking with a teammate. You're not as good at one-on-one battles as many other Japanese planes, so having a teammate there to cover for you or act as a distraction makes all the difference in the world. After that, analyze the enemy planes and try to figure out which ones you might be able to take. Dogfight bombers, drain the energy of interceptors and strikers, and run from fighters. You can do a little bit of everything, but be careful, as they might be able to match you in every one of the performance metrics that you have the best chance against them in. That is why you stick near your teammates, either to have one help you out in a fight, or to lead enemies back to them if you can't beat them in a one-on-one fight. Furthermore, you should learn the skill of discernment with this plane and realize that there are some planes that you just can't beat. Things like the BF-109s, competent P-36s, P-38s, and MiG-3s all might simply be able to outperform you in enough ways to nullify whatever small advantage you might have had. As such, it is possible to just stay out of their way and let your teammates deal with them. If they do choose to attack you and you don't have an insane energy advantage, lead them to your teammates as best as you can and jump them. It may be unhonorable, but you do what you've got to do. As such, I will label this fighter as the first and one of the few aircraft in the tech tree what I like to call a support aircraft. On your own, there's only so much you can do, so you just have to support your teammates and they have to support you. You pick off whatever targets are unaware and helpless, and the rest you beat by bringing a stronger teammate to the fight to beat up the enemy in your stead. It's a bit of a different playstyle, so if you choose to play this plane, be prepared for a bit of a paradigm shift. I will of course note that you can remove the float by carefully skimming it across the ground. While this does fix many of the issues and make it a much more viable plane, it doesn't quite bring it up to the same level as the rest of the N1K family. Again, I chose not to for the sake of an objective look at this plane. If you choose to, don't feel bad about it. It's an increase to your performance metric in just about every way, which is never something you should feel ashamed to do. Unless you crash while attempting it. If you do so, the rest of the players will look at your exploding plane with a snide look and scoff at you. War Thunder players can be cruel. In terms of its armaments, the N1K1 sports the same weaponry as the A6M2N. Two 7.7mm Type 97 machine guns, and one 20mm Type 99 Model 1 cannon. I don't need to tell you that the 7.7mm guns are worthless and not even worth considering at this rank. They've got a bunch of ammo, but don't expect them to do any damage. Take the universal or default belts if you really want to squeeze whatever damage you can out of them. The 20mm cannon is of course much better. It can do some incredible damage if you just get a small handful of hits on the enemy planes. The issues are the same as on the A6M2N though. You have a low ammo count of 200 rounds, meaning that you'll just get a few seconds of trigger time before you're out. As the 7.7s won't do anything, that means you've got nothing to shoot down planes with afterwards. Again, start practicing some serious trigger discipline. This won't be the last time you hear about low ammo counts in the tech tree. Either the differing ballistics or the slower cyclic rate was causing me some major issues in turn fights, so be wary of that as well. This is definitely a bit of a hard cannon to get used to, as the muzzle velocity is pretty slow, something that you will also get used to quite a lot in the tech tree. I recommend the tracer belt as they're full of high explosive fragmentation tracer rounds, which should get you very good hits and make hitting your limited shots easier due to all the tracers. The N1K1 can also carry two 60kg Navy Type 97 No. 6 ground bombs. These are the standard bombs carried by Japanese naval fighters, and they suck. The only difference that they make is that they make your already struggling turn performance even worse, so please ignore them, for your own sake. For mechanization, the N1K1 has combat, takeoff, and landing flaps. The combat flaps are decent, though they mainly help in getting the nose on target and not as much in sustained turn fights, so don't expect to cut down on your turning circle too much with them. The landing and takeoff flaps are primarily useful for the long water landings and takeoffs. They sadly rip at 350 km per hour, which is sad as you frequently even hit that in some sustained turn fights, making you need to really micromanage flaps. Takeoffs and landings are typical float plane stuff. You spawn above the ground in air battles, and landing is just skimming across the runway, hoping not to hit a bump and blow up. In water takeoffs and landings, both are incredibly slow due to your heavy weight. You have no control in the water, so find a really long stretch of water before touching down. Slow down as much as possible before landing, and use landing and takeoff flaps to shorten that time down as much as possible. You can try this to capture bases in naval, but the incredible issues with predicting where you'll stop and the crazy accurate naval AA batteries make this all but impossible at many times. Feel free to attempt it for cinematic value though. The visuals of the N1K1 are a little bit stupid in my opinion. I've never particularly liked the look of the N1K1 family of planes. They have way too massive and protruding of a propeller for a plane that looks like it got stepped on and is now permanently deformed. The floats really don't help its case either. It only gets one paint job, but it is the magnificent Japanese green, so I suppose I can't complain too much. The cockpit of the N1K1, like the rest of the plane, feels kinda mediocre at best. Remember, I really never play first person, so this is all a subjective view from somebody who has no idea what they're talking about. There is a lot of bracing, and your visibility isn't particularly great in any direction due to that. The forward visibility is especially bad with the amount of bracing there and the fairly tall console. The rearwards visibility is quite good though, so that is a plus. The gun sight is the standard Japanese holographic sight, which is leagues better than the one on the Kika. The finances of the N1K1 are a little skewed towards lower RP and higher SL due to it being a folded vehicle. It costs 4,600 RP to research, 16,000 SL to purchase, and 4,500 SL to slot. This is noticeably higher than the average SL cost of this rank. Similarly, the repair costs are also above average, with a fully upgraded N1K1 costing 629 SL to repair in arcade battles and 1,255 SL in realistic battles. Looking at the modifications, you will want to max out the performance first. Start off with the fuselage repair, airframe, and compressor. Then get the engine, wings repair, engine injection, and cover to max out that performance. Then get the 20mm belts and new 20mm guns to max those out as they are really your only damaging weapons. Get the radiator before going back and getting everything else, as the remaining gun upgrades and bombs are useless. Well, that's a wrap on the N1K1. I really just felt like I was missing something this whole time. I feel that this should be a very good plane on paper, but it really just feels like a lot of its design choices negate each other in the most annoying ways. I felt like I could never capitalize on any of its performance metrics, as the others held it back just a little bit too much. However, this is my opinion, and I understand that it is much better once the floats are removed. I wouldn't recommend this one for newer players, as the playstyle is quite the deviation from the rest of the tech tree, and this one might end up being a bit harder to learn than bargained for. I'd be honored to see you next time, where we'll be taking a look at the B6N2 Model 12 and the B6N2A Model 12 Co, the final aircraft of the B6N family in the Japanese air tech tree that brings some minor upgrades to the previous versions. Whether you're there or not, I thank you for tuning in today.